Okay, so let's start. Let us do the following. First, I will introduce myself as having the honor to moderate this panel, and then the panelists will introduce themselves, and then let the discussion begin. So I'm Ashot Arzumanyan, partner and co-founder of SmartGate VC. We are a pre-seed venture capital firm based in Armenia, started in Armenia and expanded to California eventually, and investing in science and engineering-driven companies. So science is very, very dear to our heart and is in the DNA of our firm and the thesis of our investment. So whatever happens in science in Armenia and related to Armenia is very important to us. Myself, last 15 years I am in investment, last 10 years I am in tech investments, and going forward I hope to see Armenia as more thriving place for science development, more startups, more developing industry, more spin-offs, and exciting opportunities. So that's briefly about myself, and let's go ahead and do introductions for the panelists. So Haik, co-founder and CTO of Bazumk, please.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for your time for being here now. I'm Haik, co-founder and CTO of Bazumk Space Research Lab. I have a bachelor in physics. I've been in around 20 years in software industry. For several years, I have been in different activities regarding space research and development projects. And as Ashot already mentioned, currently I'm holding a CTO position at Bazumk Space Research Lab, which currently is working on Armenian CubeSat project together with CSIE lab. We will talk about this later, I think. Let's go on.
Thank you. I'm Hrant. I'm the co-founder and CEO of BlueQubit. Before starting BlueQubit, which is a quantum computing company, I was in academia in the US. I have a doctorate in quantum computing from Stanford and pursued academic career at Caltech and worked at Google's quantum AI team. And I think there's an exciting trend in quantum computing moving from academic ideas to commercial products and disruptive technology. That's what drove me to start BlueQubit last year, and we have some presence in the US and some presence in Armenia.
I have the mic. Thanks. I am Art, co-founder and CEO of Podcastle, and also co-founder and one of the partners at Big Story Fund that we recently opened with my partners, co-founders of Crisp. So what we do at Podcastle, we build AI technologies around podcasting, around the audio. One of the technologies that we've built is voice cloning technology. So it's around voice and speech enhancement technologies.
Hello, everyone. I'm also Hrant. I'm leading currently Yerevanen, which is a machine learning research team. I also teach at Yerevan State University. I have background in computer science, PhD in graph theory. I have worked in industry as well, and happy to be here.
Hello, I'm Gor Vartanyan, the original one, and I'm founder of FarmTech and Chessify startups, and currently I'm VP of engineering at aerodynamics company, which is we create sport videography drones and similar other stuff. So today we will talk about breakthroughs in this direction. And also board member at Yerevan. This is the most important role of my life.
So indeed, this is really crucial role that Gor, you played, you and your friends played some while ago, 6 years, 7 years ago, yeah. When we're starting SmartGate, like Yerevan was probably 1 year old, like again baby. So we both were babies starting together. But that was like something we were always proud of. Since Vazgen, my partner, was also one of the co-founders and board members. And what happened over these years, basically 6-7 years, I believe there was built some kind of capacity in Armenia, which gives the foundation to start something of the next level. And in parallel, what was happening in the world, we have the compute revolution right now, or ChatGPT revolution that is in the lives of everyone, and also opens completely new window of opportunities for science, industries, etc. What is Armenia's role there? How you see Yerevan N going forward, and what's basically next that comes around the question for you?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So the problem with Yerevan was that it turned out that the world of AI grew faster than Yerevan. So we were happy to, and we were even like proud to do research in this direction. I don't know, not every country probably has this kind of research team or research institution, but recent trends clearly showed that whatever happened in the past 3-4 years in the global field of AI was much faster than we were ready to kind of understand or even digest, right? And now we realize that we also need to move faster to get to that speed, and in some places also be even faster than the global average, right? That's the goal of every institution or every company, if you ask me. And another trend that happened, we managed to collaborate with a lot of people from all over the world that are active in different areas of AI research. Obviously starting from Armenian network, mostly through what we call Armenian mafia, but not only, because they are well connected with others in their networks in other countries. So we started to collaborate with a lot of people who are on the front lines of this growth, and we're learning from them to grow faster. And now I feel that it's time to actually capitalize on this network, on these resources, on this knowledge, and actually transform into something that is really globally competitive, something that produces research at the quality and at the speed that matches the best players in the field. And really leverages this network that we have built over these years. There are several challenges because it turned out that some directions of research that we were involved in over these years are kind of obsolete now. So, like if you were doing, I don't know, NLP for some, I don't know, question answering for 5 years, and then you see ChatGPT, you understand that the line of research that you were trying to build does not make sense anymore, because question answering was solved from a very different perspective, from a very different direction, and it doesn't make sense to continue your line, right? And it happens in many fields, and we already see this happening in computer vision as well. So these are the tough parts of planning the research, planning the competitive research. On the other hand, we see that this top companies, top research teams, which have a lot of compute, which have a lot of resources, a lot of some of the best scientists in the world, they are working on like finite number of directions, right? They cannot cover everything, and the number of interesting problems in the world is actually larger than the number of strong teams with strong scientists and good equipments. And one of these directions where we see a big gap is applications of machine learning in chemistry and biology, where there are some good teams, but the number of problems is much larger than the number of good teams. So this will be one of our cornerstone kind of directions of our team for the upcoming years. And now we're looking for ways to also get large computational resources so that we can be competitive in that aspect as well. We're looking at different directions, from government to donors to private companies, to see which path will will prove more effective. And we're in this process of building a strong team that will leverage these hardware resources and execute in some of these directions.
So, but practically speaking, Hrant, so you are not biologists and you don't have GPUs. At least the quantity we are talking about. So practically speaking, what does it mean to get what you want to get in Armenia within reasonable time?
Most of these problems are solvable. If we spend enough effort and time, we will get both the GPUs and the scientists.
Like what you can share about what's being done right now and what's needed, basically. So
yeah.
What as an infrastructure level, country level, vision level, what needs to be contributed so this becomes a reality, and the faster the better, and why it's the moment is right now.
I think to make sure that Hrant answered to this question in a specific way, let's ask if there is a government representative in the room. Anybody from government? No. Okay. So tell the truth.
Okay. So one obvious path is the government investment, right? It's like if you're talking about like a couple of $2 million of hardware, that's a scientific infrastructure that can maintain scientific research, but also be useful for the industries that are that will be born out of this scientific research, right? So that's an infrastructure that the government can invest. Our government is a little bit scared of these investments. So I think the only exception that happened over the past years was this small satellite that was bought and sent to space, right? And it's not obvious if the government could successfully digest this project. And they're usually afraid of making big investments in one direction. So the most educated question that I get from government representatives is that, like, if you want to invest, I don't know, $20 million in one direction, like, why do you choose AI? Right? So, like, why don't you put this $20 million in material science? And the answer is that you have to make these decisions at some point. So you have to make a decision that, like, if you want to allocate, I don't know, $60 million in science investments, you have to pick 3 directions. You should not dilute it into 200 directions and spend a little bit everywhere, right? But making these decisions is hard because the government does not have the capacity to evaluate these directions, does not have the resources to make, and then it's always easier to keep everyone happy by investing a little bit in every small direction, right? So this is the challenge. I think the steps for teams like us is to engage better with the government, try to educate, also educate ourselves. It's not that I have answers to all these questions. And yeah, engage in this dialogue, try to try to help them become more like courageous to make these decisions, and then make these bold investments in a couple of directions where we have capacity.
Okay, so maybe we shouldn't invest in AI and we should invest in space. And so, but the jokes aside, so what's happening in space tech in Armenia right now? Does it exist? Does it have any perspectives in the future? Should we look at it at all? What are you doing there, guys? Tell us.
There should be making investment in both in space and AI. And actually, if you would look into space industry right now, what's happening in worldwide, most of the high techs in different areas are very connected to space. AI is among them, and, like the image processing and everything. There's a lot of things happening around it. And when we talk about space tech, there's not just the technologies that are in space. There are also it's emerging as technologies also on the ground. For example, the GPS is a good example that having a GPS network has caused so many big markets of application and everything that are using GPS data after it got available for everyone. So these kind of things. Talking about the space tech in Armenia, we had a heritage for many decades ago. We had famous people in space tech like Alexander Kemirjian, who was named as father of Lunakhod, the first moon rover, and then his first Mars rover was landed on Mars in 1973. But then everything has gone, and at this moment we need to start everything from the scratch because things have changed, technologies have changed, and we need to start from the scratch, and that's what we do now, Ashurjan. We have started everything from the scratch, and space is one of the industries that needs much more funding, dramatically more funding, and it also has very complex tech stuff that needs to be in here. So it has many different components. Hrant has already mentioned some of them. So space also needs this investment, it needs education, it also needs very good interaction with government, because regardless of a software industry, space is among those that you cannot do without working with government. In every country, space works with government, and we are not an exclusion. And we already work with government on space projects, and we have been involved into the discussions of space strategy for the Armenia and so on. It's hard. It's the pioneering, because there are a lot of things that we are doing as pioneers, and we are dragging country with us, because there are a lot of things that needs to be done on government side, like the laws and everything, regulations and so on. So this needs to be done, and they also need a need of expertise, because they also have a lack of expertise for the space tech and so on. So again, coming back to your go on.
Just quick question here. So looks like everywhere we have this competency issue on the side of decision making for funding. Not in a way that they are decision makers are incompetent, but like generally the competence lacks in the country. When you say we are just restarting some industry, that means people who understand and can commit and sign off big numbers under that initiative is very limited. So how you break this? Like how if you are the prime minister and you need to make the decision, like how you make sure that your decision is competent, that you don't waste amounts by giving money to some initiatives, let's say in space. So how you break this?
Well, knowing our Armenian mentality and overall how this works, I think that success stories is one of the big things that make a huge influence. But in order to get success stories, you need to have a collaboration, because space is one of those fields that it's very hard to go on with different collaborations. So that's one of those elements that also bring a value when you negotiate with government, by saying, we're doing this project. We, like, for example, we have launched this satellite. It works. You can see the results, and we are working. For example, Bazunk now works with CSIE, which is a very good example of collaboration within Armenia, and we are collaborating with different European companies, space tech companies. So this also is a big value. And then working with a collaboration with different European companies and applying for international space grants and bringing money from those grants to your project, that's another piece of confidence that you can show up to the government, saying, guys, you can see that we have done this, we have this funding and so on. But if you would invest into this project, you will gain these results going future for space tech and fundamental technologies for Armenia, which is strategically important.
I see. So basically, if I try to summarize, so for instance, what Hrant was saying regarding AI is we worked hard last few years. We got the network. Now we are at the situation that we will get access to the knowledge in biology, and we want GPUs. Like I'm simplifying it to very big extent, but that's what it comes down. So give us some budget, significant budget, not just small numbers, but significant budget for GPUs, and we know how we get the talent, and we can create the success story, basically, on which you can build the next steps. So if we come to the space industry, what is needed right now? So what it takes to create the first success story, and what everyone or whoever, what's the stakeholders, be it government or maybe some others, I don't know, need to contribute to create this success story.
One of the important things is to engage professionals from the industry from different countries as an advisors. So as we mentioned, that we have the need for the expertise, right? And on the other hand, it is important to realize that we need also to include education and the universities and students into these programs. For example, we have an intern which has graduated from American University of Armenia and engineering science faculty, and we have a girl that has a master in Europe in controlling systems and so on. So I mean, education is an important part for that, and engaging experts. What was the second part of the question?
So basically, what it takes to how we can contribute. We, like government, industry, other stakeholders, how we can contribute to create the success story. What should be done? Like, what are the next steps? Because this going beyond the generic things that people should get involved. It's like where, how you see the next steps. Like the government, let's say, what's the asks from the government? Like, I don't know, this $1 million for something. Like, I don't know, if it's ready, maybe it's not, but like you, what's your vision on this?
Yeah, well, the funding, of course, it's in the first place probably, and from government, their engagement as a funding for space programs and the missions will play a critical role. And from our side, it's also, we need to realize how we can get to the government door by saying that, we need money for this, for that, and we should have a good justification for those, particularly gaining about the technologies that are fundamental for the country, for strategically important for the country, right? And building some infrastructures also is among the investments. Would be good to have some shared infrastructures like the clean rooms and testing facilities for small spacecraft and so on. So these are also among the investments that are planned to be for the next few years. Yeah.
Maybe if I can interpret your answer is the following: we need to build Yerevanen of the space, basically, which Yerevanen had some years ahead, right? So in its building basically the foundations.
Yeah.
So in space, we need similar organization that can basically accumulate different capacities, capabilities, and projects, and basically start that absorption point where
Yeah.
the investments can be done, where
Mhm.
initiatives can come out. Okay, thank you. So we were talking about expertise from abroad, right, and its importance. And here we have Stanford PhD. By the way, let me tell some story before talking about before Han talks what they are doing and other stuff. So I think 2018 or probably 18. So my partner Vazgen came to me and said, "Look, the future is quantum computing, and we need to have quantum computing in Armenia." And the next step was launching video watching at Hero House. So every second day there was MIT course followed. First day there were like 40 plus people that came to like follow this course. Second day, much less. Then when they realized that it's not something that easy. Eventually, there was a small lab that started out of it, and Hrant was scientific supervisor for that lab. But then somehow this was premature, I believe. I assume, like for Armenia at that point. Now, fast forward years after, you started a company. You are running it in US and here. You have some operations here. So, let alone in the world, there is huge question like what is the future of quantum computing? And now when it comes to Armenia, it's like question in square. What are the perspectives for Armenia? So I'd like to hear just your comments, your vision, how you see it going globally, and what is its projection on Armenia?
Yep. So indeed, it's actually like probably the most emergent field out of all the present, in a sense that it's actually something that like in the US and in China, like top institutions are trying to build quantum computers, but it's moving really rapidly. And, on a hardware side, there have been serious investments for 20 years, like Microsoft, Google, IBM, as well as startups like Rigetti, IonQ, PsiQuantum, building photonics quantum computer. And, like in my view, like the question of hardware is already like resolved in a sense that we kind of understand quite well how it's going to move forward. And there has been some substantial developments that indicate that this thing is going to work. And what is that thing is basically doing computation in atomic level. So once the whole world of computing and software and AI is built on like, creation of CPUs, then creation of GPUs, which enabled like the AI development and scaling. And then the next will be QPUs, which are quantum processing units. And, like, I think to me, it's not anymore a question whether it's going to happen or not. I think we have substantial evidence that it's actually going to be possible to do. And there's few people in the world who actually follow this. And, it's a very scientific question, requires some physics knowledge and some computing knowledge. However, to actually start learning how to program a quantum computer is something that people can start doing now. So, if you want to like become a top AI company now, you're probably late. you should have started like 7 years ago when the papers were coming out on like attention is all you need, and all these big insights. Now that same thing is happening in quantum. Like only a week ago, like IBM published a paper where they were able to do an experiment in 127 qubit device that no classical computer can mimic. It's a very like toy model material science experiment, but it's going to enable a lot of creative thinking on the algorithm side, what kind of use cases you can find. And that's where Armenia can actually prepare talent. So in terms of building quantum computer, I think it's hopeless. It's only Chinese and Americans that are going to build. But in terms of the algorithms, like doing something useful with them, because it's a non-trivial question how to actually use a QPU for solving a problem that you care about, like simulating materials for chemistry or doing drug discovery or optimizing a financial constraint, like optimization problem. So yeah, I think there's potential. I think to become fully commercial, it will take 5 to 7 years. But as OpenAI came to prove, usually the next technology happens even faster. So if with a DeepMind and beating the Go, nobody anticipated it. With OpenAI, nobody, like a lot of language experts would say, oh no, there's no way it will like get close to passing like Turing test. With the quantum, it might happen even faster. I mean, I was myself shocked with the IBM result. I thought their devices are too noisy. There's no way they can solve something that's that difficult, but they did, and a lot of smart people are working on it. And yeah, that's kind of my summary of quantum. Maybe you should.
I mean, this is an interesting point that let's be 7 years ahead and be on time, at least this time. But still, the question is, what is the what? First of all, maybe for the knowledge of audience, I don't know like if everyone knows what quantum computing is. And of course, I don't think I know it myself very well, but there is a very simple thing I use to for explanation is if you need like hundreds of years to break a password, you need seconds or less with quantum computer to do it. So, but technically speaking, this means this completely different world. Imagine when compute is possible at that speed. It's completely different world, right? But then on the other side, it seems unclear where is it, and like as a small country like Armenia, if I am a physicist or maybe computer scientist, I don't know, like who you go after here? Who you think should be part of quantum computing world in Armenia, and what are the next steps from that perspective?
Yeah, great question. It's actually, I think Armenia has the best bet on algorithm side. So actually to build a quantum computer, you need like serious physicists, either atomic or superconducting materials, like modeling those things. I think that's really hard. It requires hundreds of millions of investments, and people have been doing it and investing that money for like a decade or two. In the case of like IBM, 2 decades. But for Armenia, I think algorithms can be actually developed and applied as even now for existing devices running on those quantum simulators on the GPUs. So for that, you really don't need like very deep understanding of physics. Like to understand like the main idea of quantum computing is like to understand superposition, that like, things can be in many possibilities at the same time. And then the operations, and then the rest of the concepts can be built on top of it. So there's a lot of quantum algorithms, top experts. Actually, one of the best algorithms was discovered by like mathematician who had no physics knowledge, Peter Shor, who came up with an algorithm for breaking cryptography in 1994, I think. And that's what kind of people who have like deep understanding of math, statistics, linear algebra, all quantum mechanics is like a fancy linear algebra. And yeah, I think there's quite a bit of talent in Armenia that could harness that. Same people who could do machine learning research could potentially like pick up quantum algorithms research. And like when you develop material modeling using ML, you can model using like the principles of quantum computing, quantum circuits, and constructions in a quantum reality. Yeah, so I think technical people, but not necessarily physicists.
So basically, if we have good computer science, we and some access to the industry in quantum computing, or we can call it industry. Then we may be in a good position.
That's right. Yeah, I think so. And you know, it's a small industry. It's quite small. Like there are a handful of companies who have quantum R&D teams, but the number is growing. Like it's an emergent field, and every little evidence that there's gonna be bigger potential enables like more companies to make decisions to start a quantum team. It's a very similar trajectory to adoption of AI by larger companies. Initially, you know, bigger banks getting involved, and then pharma companies and so on. Similar trend in quantum, but a couple years back.
Would it be extremely simple abstraction to say that if Yerevan N is successful, you are good to have a quality talent pool in Armenia for quantum computing?
Yeah, I think it's a great source of talent. Yes, I think you know, people with that kind of background can easily pick up the fundamentals of the quantum algorithms.
Okay, so as we talk about the spillovers and synergies, maybe we can go ahead and talk with Gore about potential spillovers to the industry. So positive effects on industry and other applications of all these things we talk about, the science. So Gore basically has always been on this intersection of science, like on the last mile of the science, and building very advanced applications and solutions through FimeTech and other companies he was involved in. So Gore, just maybe give your perspective on how you see this last mile from science to application.
Okay, let's start from government again. So my lovely topic. I think you asked, so if Haik is our prime minister, how he would decide, right? So I think it's very difficult question. So at least
Looks like you want to.
we need no. At least we need to educate some people to make decisions. So it's not their fault that they don't know. So when you watch the TV or their discussions, you see some questions. So about science, for example. So okay, we gave you X amount of money. So where are the results? So you need to be a little bit educated on that direction, not to ask these kind of questions. Okay, so I think the crucial role here can be to have some folks, educated people on the science perspective, involved in as an advisors or for the decision makers, because it's like very complex. So we saw these kind of questions actually like starting from 2010 maybe, I don't know, so at least from Tigran Sargsyan's. So and here taking into account the situation in our country, so we can divide this question into different roles. So the first one is how the country can, like, what kind of real problems we can solve with this, with the science or with the emerging technology. So it's a very important question, at least for the short term, like 3-5 years. Maybe, I don't know, but maybe quantum computing will not be in this list. But for the long term, and maybe even space will not be in this list, like in 2-3 years, okay? So, but AI definitely will be. So they look at the problems only for this part, but the second part, at least when we started year one, and so we didn't have this why, like this question, when answer of this question. It was just building ecosystem, so not to solve some problem or not to like help some startup to succeed and other stuff. So it was just to help people to go to the science and to do some research and scientific stuff, like to print the papers and like standard ecosystem. So it's very important, and I guess this part is missing in the government decision people and decision makers. So they don't really understand this part. The second part is that we need to involve people from diaspora who has like a huge experience on different domains, and we don't have like any this kind, not like applying AI on this scale, like ChatGPT or so we don't have like a single person in Armenia who really in this field. So we need to bring people from Google, Facebook, like Armenian people who really work on this direction and understand. And so it's very complex. I will go from here and there. Okay. So and the other part, sometimes decision makers talk to these kind of people without talking to this kind of people. So when somebody from diaspora come, like professor or I don't know, very very like great person, and say, okay, so you need to go and buy chairs like with $50 million budget. So because we did it in Switzerland, let's say, and they don't come to talk this kind of people like Rand to understand what kind of capacity we have in the ecosystem. Can we like absorb this like $50 million chairs, or it's meaningless at this point? And we have this kind of situation like 4 or 5 years ago when Prime Minister visited to California and talked to some people, and they like said that okay, you need to have like supercomputer in Armenia, and we calculated that maybe like 1/10 of that power will not be used in Armenia. So frankly, at that time, or maybe not frankly, I don't know, but they didn't manage to do that deal. But now, so we already calculated, and we know that what the ecosystem is ready to have these kind of supercomputers, and it's even there are some thoughts that it's the only way to jump into this boys. Yeah, difficult question. At least people should talk to each other, and decision makers should be involved in this kind of discussions as well. So for example, the part of that education is to be present in this auditorium, right? So they should send somebody, like some people. I don't know if you informed them or not, but okay, great. So they should come and talk to us, to the ecosystem, to understand, because we are building. Okay, so they are supporting, but the builders are here. So what was the question?
Okay. But let me come to this from the other perspective. Aren't we in an existential situation as a country that should feel some urgency in this? So like there should be really, the ground should be burning under feet, right? So there should be something happening more than it is. And what's the missing point? How can this be fixed?
I wouldn't say there is a huge missing point. So, and at that point, at least, there are some understanding between ecosystem and government, I guess. So that something is burning and they should do something. So the main issue here, the investment in long-term perspective, not the very short-term. I guess if somebody here already created some tool which can be used immediately now to solve some issues in the, let's say, in the border. So I'm sure. So this project will get support, and a huge support if it really, like, it's already done. So the issue here is long-term investment, not the very short-term investment. Yeah.
But yeah, this is really applauses here, and so the problem that you say is basically shifting from short-term to long-term thinking.
I wouldn't say shifting. I personally, although, for example, Hrant would not say that, but I personally would focus at least in couple of like 80% in like burning stuff and 20% maybe or 70-30 in the long term. It's not shifting. We will, like, in the nearest future, like 10-20 years, I guess we will always have something burning here. So anyway, it will be like the highest priority for us. But we also need to understand that. So in 5 years, maybe we need to have our own satellites. So at least which we can provide some low resolution images, not the high resolution images, but it will be our own satellite, and we can have like real time. Okay, so almost live stream from there. So it's very important, and they also need to read the book Moonshots. So it's very, and it exactly started from how US and how the defense ministry of US, they were against building DARPA. So, and what kind of like challenges, and it's very similar what is happening like currently in Armenia. So it's, if you don't read, so it's difficult. Yeah.
By the way, Gor is referring to Safi Bahkal's book called Loon Shots, not ML, Loon Shots. And this is really an amazing book. For instance, it's also probably the DNA of SmartGate, and the way we approach to investing in innovation. So this really very, very good book. So
yeah, and tomorrow at 12, I will be talking about this, how to implement company collaborative teams. So it's, you
amazing.
are welcome.
12 p.m. tomorrow. So Gor, you mentioned also diaspora, and here it comes some very important understanding. When we talk about Armenia, it's not really just Armenia. For instance, if someone asks, what do you invest in Armenia, or what's happening specifically in Armenia? What's the perspective of that Armenia, and thinking of Armenia alone, or some public policies being developed specifically only for Armenia, or I don't know, doing resource mapping covering only Armenia. So that seems so irrelevant in a situation when you have this huge diaspora and huge potential there. We were at a World Bank meeting recently, and Aram Salatyan was in the room. And World Bank experts referred to Estonia and other countries as aspirational countries for us, and some other countries as comparable countries. And I said, look, if you looked, let's say, 10 years ago and try to assess what's the potential of hardware in Armenia, you would say, okay, a few professionals who will die soon, and basically no potential, no perspective. But one morning, I don't know how that happened, Aram Salatyan decided that he is repatriating to Armenia. And then you have national instruments in Armenia, then you have, I don't know, engineering city, etc., etc., etc. So things changed that morning, whatever that hypothetical morning was. So you can't judge about Armenia's potential by looking just what we have internally in Armenia. Also, if we look at, we like to compare ourselves with Switzerland, I don't know, this, that, Israel, but we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We have Soviet Armenia. How was it built? Who built Soviet Armenia? It was basically two things, diaspora repatriation and link to, let's say, empire, innovation hubs. Now, Rand recently wrote an article about diaspora and problems of involving with diaspora. So, Rand, can you elaborate on this? Basically, what's the missing point? Because diaspora is integrated into all these innovation centers. Billions of dollars, let's say, were invested in people in diaspora. And these people seem to be willing to contribute, but something doesn't work. So what is it that doesn't work? Maybe you can briefly articulate on this and tell the content of your article.
I think many things actually work. So if you compare the tech ecosystem of Armenia and Georgia, as our friend Adam Bittlingmeyer says, the only serious difference is the diaspora engagement. And that is what led to, I don't know, having this many tech companies in Armenia compared to Georgia, right? So it's so we cannot say that it's not happening, but the potential is much larger, obviously. And the biggest problem in my mind is communication, right? So we are all Armenians, but we sometimes think that all Armenians should speak the same way, should have the same ideology, should look at the world the same way, but it's not the case. So people living in different cultures, in different ecosystems, have different understanding, have different vocabularies, right? Different terminology, different priorities, and do not spend enough effort to understand the vocabulary and terminology of the others, right? So I think one obvious solution is to bring them together a lot more often, right? Like go to Armenians from Armenia should go to California a lot, and Californians should come to Armenia a lot. Maybe, I don't know, maybe a single direct flight between Yerevan and Los Angeles could catalyze a lot of these projects, right? This is, I think, the main issue, and there is also some facilitation of this communication, right? So, for example, there was a discussion about, again, structuring science in Armenia. There are different ways that some diasporan experts are looking at it, which is now formalized as part of ASOF initiative. I don't know if you've heard about it, Armenian Society of Fellows. That's a network of Armenian, mostly scientists from all over the world, like more than 200 of them. And they have some vision of building scientific infrastructure in Armenia. And then there is the vision of our government, which is implemented by the science committee. And these visions are so different. And these two kind of, so each of them is developing this ecosystem or planning this ecosystem on its own, and they do not really communicate. And last time I talked about it with Ali Esayan, and he was like, yeah, Hrant, like next time I'm in Armenia, call me and let's organize a meeting between, I don't know, ASOF and Science Committee, and I will facilitate the discussion. I will make sure they talk to each other and get on the same page, right? So I'm sure Al can do that, but I don't know any other person in my large network of Armenians who can facilitate this kind of discussion between two groups of people who have developed their own understanding of something for, I don't know, years and did not communicate and did not try to align with others, right? So we need a lot more allié science, or I don't know, we need to, I don't know, ask allié science to do only this, maybe, quit his other activities. So I know many cases that, I don't know, even companies in Armenia that did not cooperate, started to cooperate when all brought them in the same room, right? So these kind of things are really missing and are like this soft part of communication and solving misunderstandings and coming to the same page is more important. It is a bigger challenge than the availability of hard knowledge, hard talent, right? I think that's the problem.
Okay, we talked about government, we talked about science, we touched the point of last mile, but let's double down on the last mile for the last part of this panel discussion. So if you think of a product where you can do audio podcast from your keyboard without involving any conversation, and doing it even before ChatGPT and before all this Gen AI revolution, being ahead of time. So you can think of Podcaster, and Arto, who was part of building PixArt and then started his company, Podcaster. So it's the very classical last mile of innovation and building business, attracting funding from non-Armenian sources of capital, top tier Silicon Valley venture capital firms, and moving these funds to Armenia to do this research here, etc., etc. So what's your view? If since I'm asking you the last one, last but not least, to answer the question. So give a bit of a comment of what everyone said, and then how you see all this from application perspective. What's the implication for your business, and how science and innovation can lead to really very attractive capital gains in Armenia.
Yeah, I already started to feel a little weird because like everything was about science and non-profit, where we are all about like profits, business. And it might sound not very noble, but yeah, doing startup is also a noble work because we are solving kind of people's problem. And I think for us, it makes easier because it's for profit. It's easier to communicate and raise money. So you are not dependent on a government and taking government money. Yeah, but I understand the whole struggle and why are those things important. But also my view is from the business standpoint. So at some point, all of these technologies, new things that are done by the smart people, if they are not used in an application where it's for profit, it's really hard to evolve and move faster. Like if you take examples of the OpenAI, SpaceX, you see that they are building space technologies, they are building NLP technologies, large language model technologies, but at the same time they are so fast and moving fast, which is fascinating. And the reason is they don't have similar dependencies and don't need to stop, but they just take technologies. And raising money in a private sector, when you have a vision how you can generate a profit, is much, much, much easier then. So I think from our point is whenever there is a technology that were cooked by the scientists, etc., I think every business would be happy to get use of that technology. And this connection and the link between business and non-profit organizations is very, very crucial. because that's what's create a long-term strategy, how those things can realize, how they can come live, and how they can kind of impact and make a big change.
I recall we were having a very interesting conversation about how ChatGPT and GenAI changed also the corporate world. All of a sudden, corporations become fast. So startups usually had the advantage over big corporations because they were much faster. Now corporations are also fast. So this kind of changes the landscape. What's your take on it? Like how startups should compete in this situation?
Yeah, I think there are two things that changed recently. Not only the technological advancement, but also the amount of layoffs that happened. And it happened in the middle management. If you noticed, a lot of middle managers got laid off. And the reason is because companies not only want to move faster in terms of technologies, but also in terms of decision making. So if before it was like startups would say like companies, large companies are slow, we can win because they are not able to make decisions, they are slow. People in the management roles that need to get approval to do something, to move fast, etc. So now building technologies kind of with generative AI is very fast job to do. And also with the layoffs, kind of decision making is becoming faster. Also using generative AI internally for operations help those companies to go faster, and as well as having the infrastructure and money to do things that startup cannot do. But it's not that it's the end of the world, because every new technology and this kind of technological revolution brings new problems to the table, which startups can think about. As Hrant mentioned priorly, there are a ton of problems, but not really a ton of great teams that can solve those problems. And especially with the generative AI, there are new infrastructure problems, how you use generative AI internally, a lot of problems, how to productize that, how to build products that internally companies can use for operations and get familiar with. Like, for example, there are a lot of companies today that don't know how to use generative AI within the teams to improve and automate the operations that they have. So this creates opportunity for a lot of companies to create those kind of startups. Or for a lot of startups, just because not having the infrastructure to support the generative AI to move faster, building some companies that can solve that problem with the infrastructure, it also makes a lot of sense. So I think the amount of new problems is getting bigger than it was before, but at the same time, it's getting harder to move fast and compete with the large companies.
Guys, I enjoyed this conversation so much. We are almost more than 1 hour talking, so probably organizers will stop us at some point, so maybe okay, so let's allocate the last 10 minutes to the questions from audience, if any, and let's call it a panel. Any questions? Please introduce yourself, mention to whom the question is, and ask your question.
Hi everyone, I'm Artur, software developer, and I have one question about government and why government need to invest in technologies, because I see that for first in last 2 years government invest a lot in technologies, and also I see a lot of another like direction where government can invest. So my question is why government need to invest in technologies and in AI?
So who do you ask this question to?
Gore.
Gore. The Gore.
Yeah, the question is not that government should invest in technology, but government should actually it's the role of government to do something. Okay, so to make something happen, especially good things. Yeah, and maybe not the technology, but from AI part. So I understand the question. So from the AI part, Hrant talked about like a couple of dozens $1 million, and it's not that just a single company in Armenia can invest and can utilize all that resources. It's to make the ecosystem to jump that train that already we talked, so that and it's not the technology, but let's say it's R&D or science. Okay, so not to buy something so that startups can benefit only to make more money, which is not good and not bad, and it's really good stuff. And in general, yeah, it's the role of government to make something happen so that we will be happy. So otherwise, like I don't know. So, and about diaspora, I just wanted to mention something here. So I asked your question, okay, right? No.
I think the question is, from what I understood and from your face also, is that it's like why government needs to invest into the technologies versus other sectors. For example, how government should decide, like, why not to invest more in agriculture but invest in technology. That was the question, right?
Yeah, great. So that is already different question. So we actually talk that they need to really understand the benefit. Yeah, if they don't understand, they will never invest anyway. But they really to understand that if they invest in developing AI, maybe agriculture also will benefit, or defense, or other other part of the security, or like different stuff.
Why technology can be more effective than, for example, agriculture or another spheres? Because like we need to understand that government have not so much money, and why like you need to invest some kind of money in technology, not in another spheres.
It's difficult question. I guess there should be other panel discussion, and people from agriculture, from I don't know, from security part, other parts also, they should come together and make the same discussion. And somebody from decision makers team, they need to understand, prioritize, and solve that issue. It's not straightforward that okay, all the money should go to AI and that's it. So.
Yeah, maybe I just have one more comment on addition to that. I think the way government should look, and always looks from the GDP perspective, basically how much each of the sectors bring value to the GDP. And there are public reports, like, yeah, agriculture has the higher impact right now on the GDP than the technologies, but the growing rate of the technologies is at a much faster pace, which means generally if you invest strategically in a long term, that's where you have the highest reward. So maybe investing in agriculture today makes sense on a short term, but on the long term, all the numbers, all the statistics that I've ever published, you can see clearly that from the strategic perspective, it makes sense to invest into the technologies, because in the future, will be high rewarding versus investing into agriculture. And it's not about like when you're investing into technologies, you should stop investing into agriculture. It's just making smart strategy, how you invest in each, how each can benefit from another, and how you basically impact on a GDP as an end goal. So I hope this answered a little bit more on your question.
I think we can take one last questions, because we see 1 minute left. So really quick question, quick answer.
Greetings, everyone. I'm Arin. I have graduated YSU chemistry faculty. I have a bachelor degree in chemistry, and I'm an applicant of AUA at Master's CIS program. And I'm highly interested about the issues you face when you create a company, especially which concentrates on scientific problems, solving scientific problems like drug discovery or other related fields of science, like you were telling about space-related problems. I'm interested, what problems do you face compared to your competitors abroad, and when recruiting talents, when creating startups, as you mentioned, what problems you face from the government side. I would like to know, as a startup company in Armenia, research companies, research startup companies, what problems do you face in comparison to your competitors abroad? Thank you very much.
Very quick answer, whoever wants to take it.
I'll do a short one from our perspective. Again, even if we look at the students and the master students, again, it's about the pool of the expertise, because at this moment there is also a big investment into education and space tech. There are different, the space is quite large, and there are different specialties for the space as well, and there's a big pool of students in abroad. So the companies like in Europe or in States, they have a big pool of students that are having an education in the space tech, which we here don't have. So this is one of the biggest part to invest again in science and education, and realize that the future of the country, it really depends on having those important pieces. At this moment, I can see that there is a positive movement in Armenia into this direction, particularly bringing a space tech master course in Armenia. I hope, fingers crossed, that will work, and that will give an opportunity to all of the universities to participate in that program, not just to bring into one specific university, so that the students from all the universities can participate into that programs.
Yeah, I just wanted to say the talent issue is the biggest issue in Armenia to build a startup, and the only thing that competitors can outperform is having someone who knows and have the domain knowledge in something that you need to spend a lot of time to build that knowledge. And it's very common in the US that once you graduate the university, even during your time in the university or after that, you already could start something to build something, because there is an environment for that. In Armenia, it's still highly unlikely that you just graduate university and also or understanding what you can start building, what kind of startup you want to build, and as well as from the university as a super rock star talent is very challenging.
Okay, so the good thing about the conference like this is most probably you can catch the speaker somewhere in Green Bean and ask your questions that you couldn't ask during this panel. So thank you very much for everyone, for the panelists, for audience. Thank you.